For today's lesson, this is our learning target. I'm going to have you read this to yourself, and then I'm going to have you tell me what you are expected to do today based on the learning target. For our agenda today on Tuesday the 11th, we want to complete the video notes in 15 minutes or less. So that's kind of your objective. Be done in 15 minutes, not 45 minutes. And then you want to also complete Station A, which is the handout you have here. How does it change by the end of the class period? If you are unable to finish it by the end of the class period, that's quite all right. You may take it as homework, or you can always come to tutoring in the morning and on Mondays after school if you need to complete it. Thank you. So for Station A, how does it change? This is directly relating to our learning target that you read earlier. It says for each set of lines, graph the lines on the coordinate plane to the right. So that's actually, these are the lines and you're going to graph them here. It says use the color indicated for each line. I'm going to in a moment give you a color to use, label each line with its equation, and then answer the questions to the right of the graph. So these two questions here you want to be able to answer after you have graphed these three lines on this coordinate plane. So the colors that I am going to use for line 1 is going to be red, line 2 will be blue, and line 3 will be orange. You can use any colors or you can utilize those same colors. It doesn't really matter. But these are the colors that I'm going to use so that I can differentiate or tell the difference between line 1, line 2, and line 3. The first line that we are going to graph is y equals x. And this line we're going to graph in red. And this line is actually known as the linear parent function. So linear because it forms a line when you graph it, and parent function because it is the simplest form of any linear function. Every other linear function that is written like it is just this line, but some information has been changed. So as you can see here, this line is y equals 2x, and this line is y equals 5x, and this 2 and this 5 does something to this graph that you hope to realize after you graph those three on this coordinate plane. So let's go ahead and get our calculator, and we're going to graph y equals x in the calculator so we can get 2 points so we can graph the line onto this grid. So here I have graphed the equation y equals x, which is our linear parent function. We see it's a line, and there are a few key features that we want to identify with this particular parent function. So we see that for a linear parent function, the slope is equal to 1, and we know that the slope is the value that's multiplied by x. And since there's no number here, we just say this is a 1 in front of the x. Also, the y-intercept and the x-intercept happen to be the same point for the linear parent function. So here's my y-axis and here's my x-axis. The y-intercept is at 0, 0, and the x-intercept is also at 0, 0. So for the linear parent function, it has those two features, a slope of 1 and a y-intercept and an x-intercept of 0. Now what we want to do is we would like to get 2 points from this line. So we have 1 point here, the origin, and we want to get another point from this line that we can actually plot on the graph on our paper so we can reproduce this line on our paper. I've turned on the grid lines to help us find the point if we need to. You can also trace the line to find another point as well. So if you don't remember how to trace the line, then that should be fairly simple. We're just going to do menu, trace, and graph trace. And then we know we're going to start on the y-intercept, so 0, 0, and then we can move away from the y-intercept to find our next point. And we can actually use any of these points as long as they are whole numbers. And so we're going to use 3, 3 as our next point. So we can go back to our paper and we can graph those points. So back on our paper, I went ahead and plotted the 2 points that I got from the calculator. So here is 0, 0. Here is the point 3 and 3. and then I've drawn a line through those 2 points that extend across the entire coordinate plane, and I've labeled the line y equals x. So make sure you do the same thing as well, and then we're going to go back and get 2 points for the line 2x, y equals 2x, and we need to also get 2 points for the line y equals 5x as well. We want this line to be in blue, the y equals 2x, and we want the line y equals 5x to be in orange. Now your colors might be different, which is fine, but I'm just using red, blue, and orange. So now that we are back on our calculator, I don't want to get rid of this graph. I want to add one. So to add a graph, just go home and then click on the calculator or click on the blue graph at the very bottom. And then here is where we can type in our graph. We can delete our equal sign. We can type in a relation, and I'm going to type in here y equals 2x. And this will be the next line that we are actually going to graph on our paper. Now, if you notice with this particular line, it also goes through the origin like our parent function did, but we do not consider this a parent function because the slope is not 1. Here, the slope is 2. So that slope in some way changes the line, and we want you to be able to determine how it changes the line since we've changed the slope. But in order to do that, we want to get 2 points from our line. So we can use this as a point. And again, if you have trouble finding the points, I've turned on the grid line in the back. We can trace the line. We can do menu. So menu, trace, and graph trace. So this will be our first point, 0, 0. And then we go up and we can find another point. So we can use 3 and 6 as our other point. So now I've taken the x and y intercept, or at least this one point from the line 0, 0. And I've also taken the other point from our calculator, 3 and 6, and plotted it. And I've drawn a line through those 2 points that extends to the entire coordinate plane. And I've also labeled that line y equals 2x. So my blue line is y equals 2x, and my red line is y equals x. Hopefully your graph looks just as neat and just as nice, because we want to use this information to answer these 2 questions on this side. So now let's go do the same thing, and let's grab 2 points for our orange line so we can graph that on here as well. So for my last graph, y equals 5x, I went ahead and I've already graphed it in my calculator, turned on the grid lines, and already done the trace, because you should be able to do that by now. Hopefully I don't have to keep putting that in the video. If not, ask for help and I'll be glad to come over there and help you with that. But I know that this is 1 point, 0, 0, and I want to get another point. And if we actually trace along the line, it will give us a point that we can't plot on our graph because our graph only goes as high as 6 on the y-axis. So it looks like that this point here should be a good point for me to use, but for some reason the trace is not going to give me that point. So if I move along my line here, it won't give me that point. So instead, we know that at the number 1, there should be a point that I can use. So at the number 1 here, there should be a point I can use. So let's just type in the number 1 and see what value it gives us. So if I type in the number 1, see it says x equals 1 and hit enter. So now this is a point that we can use for our last line, 1, 5. So for my last line, the orange one, I went ahead and plotted the y-intercept. So again, 0, 0. And then I've also plotted the point 1, 5 right here. And I've drawn a line through there, through those 2 points. And I wrote down my equation. So hopefully your graph should look similar, maybe just 3 different colors. And now you can answer this question. We want to compare the steepness of the graphs. So what do you notice about the steepness as we go from the red line to the blue line to the orange line? And then you want to compare the y-intercepts of the graphs as well, and what do you notice? And then when you finish with that, you want to do the following pairs of lines as well, and also complete the backside. So if you have questions, please ask. You know, I'm always going to be walking around asking if you need help. But if there's any part of the video you didn't understand, feel free to ask me or go ahead and rewatch it.